Deep in the Siberian Taiga, scientists came looking for ordinary geology and something they still cannot fully explain. A massive rock formation rises from the flat forest floor in a way no known natural process accounts for. Hundreds of miles away, the ground itself is collapsing, exposing layers of frozen earth untouched for tens of thousands of years. By the end of this, you will see one discovery here has been called a possible gateway to the underworld. The final secret involves creatures emerging from the melting permafrost that have left even experienced researchers without. Deep in the Siberian Taiga sit two of the most debated natural anomalies on Earth. Crater, no theory has fully explained, is a wound in the permafrost that keeps growing wider every year. Every season both reveals something new and something stranger than the last. Number 7. Patomskiy crater rising abruptly from the flat, unbroken forest of the Siberian Taiga is a formation that, at first glance, could pass for an ordinary hill. Locals gave it a name that reflects something closer to legend than geology, calling it the Fire Eagle's Nest, a name passed down through generations who avoided the site rather than explain it. Up close, however, nothing about its shape resembles the gentle slopes typical of natural taiga terrain. The Patomskiy crater is a near-perfect cone, rising with a symmetry that immediately caught the attention of the geologists who first documented it in the mid-20th century. Its size alone was enough to prompt investigation, but its shape raised a more difficult question, one that has never been fully settled. Volcanic activity was considered and ruled out. A meteorite impact was proposed and later dismissed, as no fragments or corresponding damage were ever recovered. Each new theory that emerged over the following decades met the same fate, plausible on paper, but incomplete against the physical evidence on the ground. If you were standing at its base today, looking up at a mound of rock that has defied classification for over 60 years, this is where the mystery would stop feeling like folklore and start feeling like an open scientific failure. Every leading theory has been tested. Everyone has fallen short. What happened next only deepened the confusion when a research team pushed further into the crater than anyone had gone before. Number 6. The expedition mystery. By the mid-20th century, the Patomskiy crater had drawn enough scientific attention that a formal expedition was organized, one intended to finally settle the question that decades of theorizing had failed to answer. Researchers descended into the crater itself, collecting samples, documenting its structure in detail no previous survey had attempted, and searching specifically for evidence that would confirm or eliminate the leading explanations of the time. For a period, the investigation proceeded as expected. Radiation levels were tested to rule out a possible nuclear origin. Soil composition was analyzed for any trace of meteoric material. Neither produced the confirmation researchers were hoping for. Then, partway through the expedition, the direction of the investigation shifted in a way that was never fully explained to the public that had been following it. Official records from this period remain incomplete. Some findings were referenced only briefly in later academic work, without the full context that would explain why the investigation changed course. What is known is that the team left the crater without a definitive answer, and without resolving many of the questions their expedition was meant to close. Rather than settling the mystery, that expedition became part of it, a documented gap in the timeline that later researchers have never fully accounted for. And while the crater kept its secrets, hundreds of miles away, the ground itself had already begun to give way to something even harder to explain. Number 5. The Batagika Mega sinkhole hundreds of miles from the crater. In another remote stretch of Siberian permafrost, the ground itself began to fail decades ago, and it has not stopped since. What started as a small depression in the forest floor has grown into the largest permafrost sinkhole ever recorded on Earth. A crater-like scar visible even from satellite imagery, expanding a little further with every passing year. Locals gave it a name that reflects the unease its appearance inspires, calling it the gateway to the underworld from above. The comparison is not difficult to understand. Its walls plunge nearly 100 meters down in places, exposing layer after layer of frozen earth that has remained sealed since long before recorded history began. But its terrifying appearance is only part of what makes Batagika significant. As the sinkhole continues to widen, its exposed walls are revealing something far more valuable to researchers than its shape alone would suggest. A direct physical timeline of the planet's climate stretching back tens of thousands of years, embedded in ground that has never been disturbed disturbed until now. What is being uncovered beneath those collapsing walls is only beginning to be understood, and some of it has nothing to do with climate history at all. Number 4. Secrets beneath the permafrost. Every year that Batagika continues to expand, its retreating walls expose another layer of ground that has remained completely sealed since long before human civilization began keeping records. This is not gradual erosion in the ordinary sense. It is a slow unsealing of deep time itself, one thaw season at a time, revealing material untouched by air, light, or disturbance for tens of thousands of years. Researchers studying these exposed layers have been able to reconstruct portions of the region's ancient climate with remarkable precision, using the permafrost itself as a kind of frozen archive. But the sinkhole has not limited itself to preserving climate data alone. Buried within these same layers, scientists have begun recovering physical remains, organic material that has stayed intact far longer than conditions elsewhere on Earth would typically allow. What makes this discovery unsettling is not simply what has already been found, but the fact that Batagika is still growing. Each year exposes ground that has never been examined before, meaning that everything recovered so far may only be a small portion of what remains sealed deeper within its walls. Some of what has already surfaced has gone far beyond preserved soil and ancient sediment, emerging instead in a form far more difficult to look away from. Number 3. Ancient creatures. Among the material emerging from Batagika's collapsing walls are remains that have stunned even researchers accustomed to studying the deep past. These are not fossils in the traditional sense, fragments of bone worn smooth by millions of years. Some of these remains still carry soft tissue, hide, and in certain cases, internal material that has no business surviving this long under any normal condition. The extreme cold that created Batagika in the first place is the same condition that has kept these remains locked in a kind of suspended state, untouched by decay for tens of thousands of years. When exposed to open air after so long, specimens like this offer researchers something exceptionally rare, a direct physical link to prehistoric life, rather than a reconstruction built from partial remains. This level of preservation has already begun reshaping scientific understanding of species that existed at the end of the last ice age, offering details about their biology that fossils alone could never provide. But not every discovery pulled from these walls has fit neatly into what researchers expected to find. Some remains recovered from Batagika have resisted identification entirely, and it is those unclassified finds that have generated the most disagreement among scientists studying this site. Unknown organisms. Not everything emerging from Batagika's thawing walls has been easy to classify. Alongside remains that clearly belong to known Ice Age species, researchers have recovered specimens that do not match any documented category in the existing scientific record. Remains that are neither clearly identifiable as a known extinct species nor easily dismissed as an unusual variation of one. For a discovery site already responsible for reshaping parts of prehistoric science, unidentified remains carry a different kind of weight. Official researchers have been cautious in their conclusions, aware that incomplete specimens can be misread and that extraordinary claims require an unusually high standard of evidence before they're accepted. That caution, however, has not stopped public speculation from moving far faster than the official research process ever could. At least one find in particular has become a point of quiet disagreement within the scientific community itself, referenced in academic discussions without a fully agreed upon conclusion. Some researchers argue it represents a known species in an unusual state of preservation. Others are far less certain that explanation accounts for everything observed. No consensus has been reached, and as more of Batagika's walls continue to collapse each year, the site shows no sign of running out of material still waiting to be identified. Number 1. The final revelation. When researchers began comparing findings from across the region, the crater that has defied explanation for over 60 years, the sinkhole that keeps widening every season, and the unidentified remains still emerging from its walls, A connection started to take shape that no single discovery could account for on its own. These were not isolated anomalies scattered across unrelated parts of Siberia. They were tied together by the same underlying forces: ancient geology, accelerating climate change, and a landscape that has been sealed and preserved for tens of thousands of years, only now beginning to open. That convergence is what unsettles researchers more than any individual find. A crater with no confirmed origin can be treated as a geological curiosity. A growing sinkhole can be attributed to a warming climate. Unidentified remains can be filed away as pending further study. But when all three are occurring in the same region, accelerating at the same time, the explanation becomes far more difficult to isolate. No official theory has fully unified these findings into a single, confirmed cause. What is certain is that the region is changing faster than it has in recorded history, and that every year of continued thaw exposes more evidence and more uncertainty than the year before. What the Siberian Taiga has kept frozen for tens of thousands of years is only beginning to surface, and no one studying it yet knows what else is still sealed beneath the ground. The Siberian Taiga has held its secrets through the entire span of recorded human history, sealed beneath ice that has not moved in tens of thousands of years, a crater that still defies explanation, a sinkhole that keeps growing wider with every passing season, and remains emerging from the thaw that scientists have not yet been able to fully classify. None of it has been resolved. The leading theories about the crater still fall short of the evidence. The unidentified specimens pulled from Batagika's walls remain a point of quiet disagreement among the very researchers studying them. And the ground itself continues to change faster than at any point in recorded history, exposing more of what it has kept hidden with every year that passes. What has already surfaced has been enough to stun experienced researchers, but Batagika is still expanding. The crater is still unexplained, and somewhere beneath ground that has not been touched in tens of thousands of years, something else is still waiting to be uncovered. The Siberian Taiga is not finished, revealing what it is kept frozen. And when the rest of it finally comes to the surface, no one yet knows what will be waiting there.